Have you ever visited or lived a certain place in the world and just felt like it was made for you? Or perhaps the energy there just felt so good? Like maybe you get off the plane, you settle into your hotel, and you're like, man, I feel like I've been here before. This actually feels like home to me. Well, guess what? You're not making that up. Oftentimes, there are certain places in the world that can really support us based on our astrogeography. Now, if you've never heard that term before, which I'm guessing you probably haven't, it's not super mainstream. We're going a little French here, but I have found this to be such a cool, supportive tool. It's fun and is also useful. I've had some of the biggest breakthroughs just by kind of learning a little bit about this. And the guest I have today, Ebony Broderick, she's an Akashic Records reader, she's an astrogeography guide. Basically, she can look at this crazy map of your chart and be able to tell you or explain why certain places have really good energy for you, for business, for personal life, for falling in love, for communication. It's really fun. So we went into this interview. This is a fun bonus episode, but I wanted to bring this to you because as a business owner, really, especially as we're creating conscious businesses and brands, we have to really start paying attention to these things. I found there are certain places in the world that feel really good for certain things and other places that maybe do not. And so if we understand it and we can be very conscious about how to bring in that type of energy into our work or our space, or if we can use that for book writing or retreats or other things, it can really help support us so that we are actually creating impact in the world beyond just like us moving and doing the things. We can be supported in other ways. And this is one of the fun ones to do it. So, with that, I am so excited to introduce you to my beautiful friend, Ebony. Ebony, I'm so happy to have you today. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited. So excited. Yeah.
I have been so excited about this because you've been on my like dream podcast list since before I started my podcast. You don't know
That
that,
is
but I
just
have your name written down somewhere as
awesome.
these are the people I want to interview, and I feel like we're finally here. So
Yeah. No, I'm very excited. I have so much I want to say.
I know. And the topic we're covering today is a lot. Everyone that's listening, buckle up. This is going to be fun. And also, if it feels like it's going deep or whatever, just Ebony has amazing resources and beautiful things. But we're gonna do good stuff today. But Ebony, it is I'm recording this at 5:30 at night my time. You are on a whole different day. Can you tell us where
Yeah.
you are in the world? Because
Yes,
you're a day ahead of me.
it's crazy to think about that. Yes, I'm in Victoria in Australia, about an hour out of Melbourne, so that's a way to orientate that. But yeah, I'm from a small growing country town. But yeah, it is summer. So yesterday it was about 40 degrees Celsius. But yeah, it's cooling down today. So thank goodness, because that was a lot.
It's too hot. I got snow today.
Mhm.
So that's how
Oh yeah, it's
cold
just
it is here.
it blows my mind truly. Especially in December. I'm like,
Mhm.
what I would do for some snow.
Yeah, you're
That'd be
gonna have to come
nice.
visit me, and you have good reason to, which we're gonna get into.
100%.
But
Yeah, we'll get into that.
give everyone just a quick snapshot of who you are and what you
Yes.
do.
I am an astrogeography guide, reader. I use it interchangeably, but astrogeography is astrocartography. They're the same thing. I get this question a lot. It's the astrology of place, which I will mention what that is in just a sec. But yeah, when I first started this work, I just went with that wording. Astrogeography just related to me more. But yeah, they are the same thing. So basically, it's the astrology of place. If you could visualize like a map of the Earth, it's like putting your natal birth chart over a map of the Earth and seeing where the planets were at your time of birth and the angles they were at based on north, south, east, and west. But yeah, it basically gives us a birth chart, but like looking at the whole world. So it gives so much information, but we'll get into that. I'm also an Akashic Records reader, and I've been doing this work since 2019. I started reading for other people in 2020, but the start of 2019 was when everything started for me. But within the Akashic Records, I channel a group of light beings called the Pinnacle, and they are a collective of Pleiadian energy, and they give so much incredible guidance for us on our paths, and it just is truly limitless. Yeah, it's just incredible. And yeah, I think that kind of sums up what I do.
I think astrogeography, one, I had never heard of it until, and I don't even know how I found you. I stumbled across you somehow on Instagram somewhere, but it's so fascinating to me because it wasn't something people were talking about a lot. And I feel like it has now become something that people are starting to pay more attention to. However, when I bring it up to people, people are like, I have no idea what that is. And I'm like, guess what?
Yes.
Ebony is amazing. And I'm going to have her on the podcast to talk about it because I found I think the astrology birth chart thing is fascinating. I found this to be really wildly fascinating because of the interactions we've had as you've looked at certain things and said, oh, this is a thing. This place is a thing because certain places feel really powerful to us or really stressful. And your with the study of what you're learning and what you teach is there's a reason behind it. So can we go into that a little bit? What each planet has its own kind of theme. If people looked at a
Mhm.
map and then laid the planets over it, they'd see all these crazy lines. It's wild to
Yes.
look at. And
Yeah.
it's nice to have someone
Yeah.
who actually understands it. But what does it mean to look at your astrogeography and say, okay, there's a sun line, there's a moon line. What do they all
Yes.
mean?
Yeah. What do they mean? Yes. So I'll just talk really briefly about what each planet represents. There's so much to it, but just really briefly. And also touch on the four different angles because you can think of the planet as like the overarching energy of a place. Sorry, I should say, if you're thinking about looking at just one particular line, with the planet's energy, that will be the overarching energy there. But then with the angle, you will be able to see what area of life that planet will mostly influence. I hope that made sense. But I will just talk really briefly about each planet. But the sun factors in as well as the moon and the nodes of the moon. So with the sun, that is just the energy of positivity, optimism. It's just so much to it. Motivation, things like that. It's the sun's one that most people could understand pretty well. The moon is our emotions, intuition, home, divine feminine energy, things like that. And then Mercury is communication, small communities, curiosity, intellect, things like that. I'm jumping around, but Venus is love and all that comes with love. Mars is the divine masculine. I should say Venus is also the divine feminine. Mars, divine masculine. You've got drive, passion, also motivation, things like that. A lot of energy. I'm jumping around, but I'm just going to jump to Jupiter because that came to mind. Jupiter, abundance, expansion, things like that. Neptune, spirituality and creativity and imagination. Again, I'm all over the shop, but Saturn, Saturn, hard work, resilience, learning things like that. Uranus, change, rebirth, revolution, things like that. I'm totally lost here. Where was I? Neptune, Uranus, Pluto, transformation.
Mhm.
I'm jumping around, but yes, Pluto transformation. What did so the North Node, which is about soul purpose. The South Node also factors into this, but it doesn't come up on a chart. You have to reverse the North Node. So I'm just going to talk about the North Node, so as soul
Okay.
purpose, and then Chiron, which is known in astrology as the wounded healer, but essentially it is, I don't like the word wounded healer, but I just could never think of another way to describe it.
Mhm.
It's the things that come up that are like our pain points. And as we work through them, they become things that we really can master and support other people through.
Mm.
And I swear I might have forgotten a planet there. Did I forget a planet?
Mm. I feel like you covered them. Hold on, let me look at
I
your
don't think I
list.
forgot one. I should.
I think you got them. And explain a little bit. Okay, yes, each planet has a theme. or
Yeah.
that it connects to. And when it comes to business or love, you can look at where these lines are, correct? And then either bring parts of your chart into where, if you don't want to move far away, if you're like, oh, I really need to find a partner, perhaps moving is not in my budget, but I can channel something from that line or a place into my
Yes.
life. Or that might be a really good place to go on vacation or support me
Yes.
if I
Yeah.
do want to move there. Correct? Is
Hmm.
that how people can use these to their
Yes,
advantage? Or what's the
absolutely.
best way to do it?
So it comes down to also looking at the angles. So there's 4 angles. And so on a map, you'll see, for example, Saturn ascending or AC, Saturn descending or DC, the Saturn MC and the Saturn IC. And they just relate to the fourth house, 10th house, seventh house, and fourth and first house. Sorry. So basically, with the AC, that's your personality and what you embody. So on a line, an AC line, you are embodying that energy. With the descending, it's other people embodying that energy and you seeing it in them, but it's like you're I can never say that word, mirroring it to them.
Uh-huh.
And then MC is work and like larger groups, it's social groups and things like that. And then the IC is home and sense of belonging in our inner world. That's the angles. And to do with work there in business, there's so many that you can look at. It really depends on the work you do, but Saturn is just a really good one because that's all about structure, getting things done, like the divine masculine in that way. It provides that structure and stability, also like abundance in that way. And for work, you could look at the Saturn MC line because that's directly connecting Saturn as work with the work angle. In terms of other planets, someone just rang my doorbell. Are you joking? Who is at the door? Okay, sorry about that. I'm just gonna let them ring the doorbell. I think it's probably a package getting dropped off. What was I? It depends on the work you do, but yeah, so for example, if you were doing spiritual work, Neptune
Mhm.
is a really good one. I'm just trying to think, other than Saturn, you've got Uranus is like all about doing a full rebrand in that way. And then Pluto is all about transformation. So it's really like what you're looking to achieve through your career. Mercury, if you are somebody whose career is all about communication. And then when it comes to actually bringing that energy into your life. So yes, you can 100% best ways to go there, either move there or visit. That's totally not possible a lot of the time. We can channel that energy into our lives. So it sounds actually the most woo thing ever, but I swear it works. Is say, for example, you are wanting to really grow like how well you communicate. You could look to your chart and see, okay, where's my Mercury ascending? And that's all about you being able to embody Mercury. So really like growing those communication skills and building community and just having a really active mind and just wanting to learn and things like that. So you can draw that in by either like taking a trip there or things like that. But you can also draw it in by incorporating lots of little things like art, music, food. What's another one? Any kind of TV, things like that, language. So, say you had a Mercury ascending in Spain, you could bring in any number of different Spanish influences to help you like tap into that energy on your chart. And it will be totally different for everybody,
Oh,
which is why it's so powerful. And it doesn't change because it's based on your natal chart. So if you have a reading, it's always going to be the same information. And it's not, there's other ways to have the information and view it in the way in terms of like transits and things like that, that
mhm.
will impact things. But overall, 95% of it will just be staying the same, which is why it's really powerful. Like your natal birth chart, that's not going to change. If that makes
Change. Yeah, that
yeah,
makes total sense. So I want to just give people an example. So they're like, wait, what are we all talking about? So
yeah.
when Ebony, you had a group a while ago and I was in this, it was a cool container. And you did like really many, okay, where do you live now? Let's look at your lines of where you are currently. And I live in my hometown. I have left, I've moved lots of places. I have come back here. This place doesn't necessarily feel like a fit to me necessarily. Like I've always
Mm,
tried to like I never thought I would come back, that kind of a thing. However,
mm,
you pointed out, you're like, oh, you're right on your Mercury line, and you're close to the Chiron, which is the wounded healer. And I remember like reading that, and maybe you can explain it a little bit, but I was like, okay, that's fascinating because my job is communication. And the work that I'm doing here is a lot of inner work, a lot of personal development, and a lot of healing. So that
yeah.
makes total sense.
Hmm.
But then I asked you and I said, can you look at this one place in the world where I studied abroad in college? And I have never been more, again, it was college, so I understand that too, but the place felt like it was created for me. I felt like the most vibrant there. Like I just was
Mm.
obsessed with the city. It just felt like it had just been created just for me, which I know sounds so silly, but there are certain places in the world where you're like, oh my gosh. And you were like, oh yeah, that makes total sense because your
Yeah.
sun line and your Jupiter line, I don't know which
Yeah.
they were ace, I don't know what they were, but you're like, are
Yes.
right there. I
Mm.
remember looking at that and just I sobbed for like days because I was like, I was so happy there. Not that I'm not happy
Yeah.
here, but it just that place felt to
Hmm.
me like a
Hmm.
place. So just like a
Yeah.
quick example of though I didn't realize that was a place for me, you could look and say that was a place
Yeah.
for you. It was
Yeah.
justifying.
It's so different from where you live and like where you grew up. It's not surprising at all to me that you felt that way. And just generally, those are two of the best lines.
The
And
Jupiter and the
I
sun
should
line?
say, sorry.
The Jupiter and sun
Yes,
line?
yes,
Okay,
Jupiter and the
okay.
sun. And I shouldn't say the best because there's no best and worst, good and bad. It's
Right.
all things can be more supportive and more challenging, but it also depends on what you're looking for and where you're at in life. So the Jupiter ascending and the sun ascending is you being able to embody just like all the good things, abundance and just like joy and positivity. And of course, like you said, it factors in why you're there and at what time in your life. Like that makes a difference. But with this kind of energy, I don't doubt that like anytime you went there, you'd be totally tapped into that. It would just
Okay.
feel different, like a little bit because of where you're at in life, but it also might not. Like you might be like thrown straight back into like exactly how you felt then. It really it's still stable energy there for you.
Okay.
Um,
Fascinating.
and then what else was I going to say about this? Oh, and the Mercury for you with being born in a Mercury descending. Why this is interesting, not only because of what you do, but also because no matter where we go, the energy we're born on, it goes with us in that like it imprints on us in a way. So it's like your rising sign or your sun sign. It really becomes like a really big part of who you are. And so that just makes total sense to me. And then with the Chiron as well, the Chiron descending, that is totally about healing. So it can be tricky, it can be difficult because it brings up a lot of stuff, but it's there because it's designed to like bring that up in order for you to like transform that into really strong a strength for you. You know what I'm saying? If that makes sense.
It
Um,
makes total sense because I think when you said that, not that I don't love where I live or this place, but it just, I've always been like, one day eventually I'll need to leave this space. Or this just doesn't, some places I've gone that I've lived have just lit me up. Like life just feels so different there. Whereas like here, it's different. But when you had put that, this is your role to alchemize this healing and use it for this next thing, it completely changed the way I was looking at space and place currently. And that was
yeah,
really fascinating for me, actually.
yeah.
That was a big breakthrough.
Yes, I totally understand that completely. And the other thing I just want to say really quickly was that because your Chiron in your natal chart is Gemini, that is just so interesting to me because it's a Chiron line you're on. So it's going to bring up your natal Chiron, which is Gemini, which is communication. ruled by Mercury. So it's just like double dose of that energy for you. And it's in the seventh house, which is all about relationships. And the angle of the Chiron is descending, which is also the seventh house. So it's like, in terms of your Chiron, you're really here to be an awesome communicator directly in relationship with other people. So that just makes total sense. And this like location, it just helps you become that,
Mm.
even though there would have been like it's the ups and the downs,
Mhm.
but it's totally the soul's path. And I just find that so interesting because yeah, knowing that is just like an extra piece of the puzzle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I don't, can you tell, since this is all about origin stories, what made you even decide to start looking at this, paying attention to this? Because
Yeah,
again, it's not mainstream. It's starting to
no.
maybe get there. It's not though. So how did you even break into this to be like, you know what? I'm going to look at this and understand all of it.
You know what's so weird? I don't even remember. I have no memory of this. I think so. I discovered the randomly, very, I shouldn't say randomly, completely divinely. I had the Pleiadians find me, and that was going to sound really weird, but they found me. It was like I was in a portal. It was absolutely wild. And then I found the Akashic Records. So I didn't find them through the records. They found me, and then I found the records. And then after that, I found astrogeography. And I think I was just at a place in my life where I was just going along with like completely just flowing with my intuition and what felt right. And I had no expectations. So I think that was what was really powerful for me because I did not go into it thinking this is going to be something. This is I didn't go into it with a business in mind necessarily, which is I'm not saying that if you do, that's a bad thing because that's a great thing because you know exactly what you're wanting. But
Mm.
I just went into it being like, I find this interesting. I'm just gonna like really go into this. And then it just naturally unfolded. And I literally cannot remember the first time I saw a chart or how I even just I have no idea where I saw the word and how I got here. It almost feels like I just was in a portal the whole time and now I'm here.
That's
It's
amazing.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting story. I guess I don't think many people go through that, but yeah, it's
What
my
I've
story.
Yeah, but what I love about your work is that you have such a big heart for people and you feel like you're really here to serve. And so I love that you were like, I didn't actually go into this from a business perspective. You just came with curiosity
Hmm.
and divine guidance, and I think that's very fun. So
Yeah.
this is neat, and I do believe this is a cool tool for people. And again, if you don't know what we're talking about, I'm going to put some stuff, we'll link to you on Instagram and other places where people can like even pull up their chart. To get your
Yes.
chart, you
Yes.
need your birthplace and time, correct?
Yes. Yes.
So that's important. So you can pull up and then it shows
Mhm.
you a map and it looks like this. It's just like a flat map of the world. And it's got all these
Mhm.
lines going which way and whatever. And then
Mhm.
someone like Ebony can look at
Yeah.
them and
Yeah.
say, oh, wow, this place is really
Mhm.
fascinating for you.
Mhm.
It was interesting this summer. Or this year, actually, I went to Hawaii twice this year. We're recording this at the very end of 2024. I'd never been before. I've been to many places around the world, had not been to Hawaii. But the second time we went there, we went with our kids, and it was the most beautiful trip we've ever had. And so when I was there, the kids were so happy. My youngest wants to move there. He talks about it literally every day of his life. But when we were there, I pulled up like his little chart because he was especially like,
Mhm.
and he's got like a sun line that's running
Oh,
through. I think I have
I
a sun
almost
line that
asked you
runs
that.
through. So when I had Ebony run mine before we had this podcast because I was like, I want a deep dive here. But I was like, where should I move? Do I need to move to Hawaii? And you were like, yeah, actually, that's not a bad place for you. So that was fun because there are so many places in the world. There are a lot of other places I could probably move based on your analysis. That would be great too. But it was just fun to go places where like the energy
Mhm.
feels amazing. We are all so supported in this space. Like, what a
Mhm.
beautiful place, you know?
Yeah, it's incredible. And yeah, I find that just, yeah, it makes complete sense to me, but it never is completely, I can't explain it. I'm still like in awe of it. It's not shocking to me anymore, but I'm still like, this is so cool. And it will never not be cool because even in my own chart, I find new things all the time. I'm constantly like, oh, I went there. Oh my God, there's this line. I hadn't even thought about that. And this thing happened. And it's interesting in hindsight to
Mhm.
go back and be like, that happened there. And oh my God, that's why I felt so amazing. And that's why I had the challenging time there. Or that's why I felt
Right.
super at home there. And of course, I always try and say, not a disclaimer, but there's so many reasons why we feel the way we feel. And this is just like a piece of the puzzle. It's obviously depending on what you're going through and like
Mm.
so many factors, but it's just like a nice piece of the puzzle that can help you reflect, but also help you plan and understand yourself and
Yeah.
understand why you're drawn to places. And
Mm.
it's just got so many different uses in that way.
We got to go here because of that. Okay, so finding new things about your chart. In the
Yes.
process of preparing for this podcast, Ebony and I discovered this very weird connection that we have in her chart with her North Node
Mm-hmm.
line. And
Mm-hmm.
can we talk about it? Because that was really fun.
I'm st it's gonna bother me that I can't get across to to the listeners how like wild this is because my line, okay, guys, my line goes like right through Amy's cabin, but like to the point where it's that close that it pretty much could go through the cabin. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So,
This,
but
when
so
I
okay,
saw
hold on.
this,
Give a
I've got to
feedback of
go
like
back. Yeah,
go to the okay. So the
yeah,
North Node. Let's talk about that for
yes.
a minute. And
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
also, I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but let me give like a quick little disclaimer. Earlier this
mm-hmm.
summer, if you don't follow me on Instagram, we bought a cabin in Island Park, Idaho, and it's on Henry's Lake. It's something that I deeply feel like was manifested because I had written about Henry's Lake in my journal and a cabin on it for years and years. It finally happened. It's a short-term rental. You can go stay there. It's really cute. But as Evan and I were preparing for this podcast, and I don't even know how this did you just like pull up your I think I joked because I said you need
Yes.
to come
No,
visit Yellowstone.
yes,
And
because I have always been drawn to, I saw your cabin and I was like, this is my kind of place. I'm really drawn to just that landscape. And it doesn't really make sense because where I live.
yeah, also you're very far away. Like Australia to
Yeah,
like Idaho. It's
yeah, it
really
doesn't
far.
make sense in that way, but also like we don't really have any areas in Australia like that. And
Mm,
the ones we do have are my favorite places. And they're still not really the same, obviously. Very different. But I think, yeah, I was like, I need to see where Amy's cabin is in my chart. And it's my North Node line. It's my North Node IC line. And so North Node, like I was mentioning briefly, it's all about soul purpose. And the IC is like your fourth house. So it's like feeling of comfort, feeling of belonging, feeling of home.
mhm.
You uncover your purpose within the home. Your purpose can be your home life, that kind of thing. But North Node lines have a real deep feeling of home in general. And the fact that the angle is also the angle of home, it's just like doubly powerful. And then when I actually looked at it, I was like, I knew that I had a sun line. I think it was a sun line, yeah, through that kind of area. And I just thought, oh, that's cool. But then when I zoomed in, I really noticed the North Node line. And the thing about the charts is somebody could have a lot of lines in the US because it's such a big place, or they could have a few clusters here and there and a lot of open space. It really depends. And I have a few lines, but for it to go through, so this line, guys, goes through like the actual spot on the lake where Amy's cabin is, not just the area, not just the town, like the actual spot on the lake.
Yeah,
And I was literally,
it's
I've
so
never had
wild.
an experience where it was that strong, like the epicenter. And the way that it's the North Node line. Of course, any line, I'd be like, oh my God, that's crazy. But the North Node line, of course, I looked at that and I thought, oh my God, that feels like home to me. Like I still think about that. I'm just like, that's crazy.
It's really,
How?
yeah, because I was like, you should just come. I think you said it was like so hot. It's snowing here. Like, come visit my
Yes.
cabin. And they're like, actually, this is so wild. Because I just pulled up
Mhm.
so when Ebony does these readings for you, she like goes deep into all these places. So I just pulled up my North Node off the MC or DC. Which one is more important?
Oh, which one? Sorry, what do you mean?
If North Node MC, which one is yours for the
Oh,
cabin
I
over here?
see.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. So
Sorry.
for instance, when you wrote down about my North Node, you have Canada, British Columbia, and the Yukon is like my North Node I see
Mm.
area. And so that's why this is so crazy that it even came anywhere close to where I was like a place where I was like, come visit because there's a whole world there. And you're like, my North Node
Yes.
is literally the line. It's literally your address. So I think you're supposed to come visit and stay in my cabin.
It's
So great.
truly incredible how that happens. Like people you meet with where either they're your North Node or you're their North Node, there's just something. There's that connection. There's
Hmm.
weird synchronicities. I shouldn't say that. Like it's not weird synchronicities, just in general. And they really, it's like they're there to help you grow and be a part of
Yeah.
your soul purpose. Like they play a part in your story that can be quite significant. So that's why I just found that
Yeah, that was pretty crazy.
just
Okay, so people can
amazing.
activate these for you too, right? So maybe I'm your North Node connection here, but
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
curious, Ebony, because when we talked about this before we hit record, for my Venus area, Nebraska came up, which is
Yes.
not necessarily a place like I've been to Nebraska quite often. It's not really a place where I'm like, oh my gosh, I love it the most. However, my husband is from Nebraska and we go back to Nebraska often because of his family. And so I get a lot of Nebraska in my life. And you said, oh, that makes sense because even though that Venus, I didn't need to go to Nebraska to fall in love and use that. I just had Nebraska
Hmm.
basically come to me, which was fun.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
people can help channel this too,
Yes,
correct?
because
Okay.
he is on your Venus. He is from your Venus descending. And like you could have met him anywhere and it still would have been connecting you to, it's like you're channeling it through him, if that makes sense.
Okay. Okay.
He
That's so
is
fun.
the portal for that,
Uh-huh.
which is just so interesting. That's just basically the Venus descending is like the line if someone's looking to find their soulmate,
Okay.
their life partner. That's the energy of that. It's just
Okay.
very powerful for that.
If you are single right now and you're looking to find your partner, look
Hmm.
at your Venus line, and that might
Yep.
be a good place
Yep.
to take a visit.
Yes. Yep.
Move.
Exactly. Yeah. It's
Okay.
always good if the line's nearby, but so often it's not. So
And
you got to do what you can.
how big is the sphere of influence of a line for what we were talking about earlier with like where I studied
Yes.
abroad? I had Jupiter and the sun line not on top of the town, but it was holding space around it. And I'm
Yes.
curious, like how much
Yeah.
what's the sphere of influence or the orb around each line?
I remember I looked at your chart like yesterday to see Spain specifically,
Mhm.
and the sun line was pretty close. So it was very strong. And then Jupiter was out a bit, but it still would influence you. So the orb of influence is just what we call it. Essentially, it can be 700 miles out or 1100 kilometers is like
Okay.
the kind of cutoff zone from the center of the line. It obviously closer to the line is more potent, but it just depends what fits in that because you're still in it, it just becomes fainter. But that's
Gotcha.
quite a
Okay.
large orb of influence. It never used to be that way, but Jim Lewis, who discovered astrocartography, astrogeography, he he eventually his original orb of influence, I think, was about 400 miles maybe. And then he extended it to 700 because he was like, actually,
Okay.
from his 30, 40 years of experience, he was like, I think this is a lot.
It's big.
So a lot further out. So when I do readings, for example, you have to stick within, I try and stick within more the stronger influences because there are so many lines and if you look too far to the sides, like you're just covering so many locations and it can get confusing for the person as well because if you're looking in Europe, for example, and you've got a Venus line, I'll try and stick to the main areas around that line, even though the energy will likely extend out further than what I'm telling you, just because otherwise you're like, okay, this is just all there, and you don't have any idea where it's most strong. Because you can look at your
Okay.
own chart like 100% and see what's going on and totally learn in that way. It can be confusing, but I would never tell anyone that they need to have any kind of reading, because it's totally up to you and you
Hmm.
can learn as you go. A lot of the softwares, like a lot of the main geography pages that bring up your maps, are very confusing in that you can click on a line and it will tell you with what the angle and the planet means, but it's a lot of like, it's very old. The information was written, I don't even want to know how many decades ago. It's very dense, quite confusing, and often it's quite like heavy. Like it will tell you this is a really dense, heavy location and watch out for this kind of person here and be on guard. And it's quite scary. I remember reading these and I was like, this is a lot. And obviously, like certain energies carry a more intense energy, but yeah, they're quite scary. So that's why I say you can definitely go into it yourself, but just take what is there with a grain of salt and don't feel like scared by it. Because I think sometimes it's whoa, this is quite
Okay.
intense. And there's
Yes.
a
And this
lot
is
here.
why I think it's nice to have someone like you be able to look at it and just like you were saying, this is here and this is also here and you're doing this so I can see that this is really helpful for you, can be useful.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Because yeah, I know when I started because again, you made me so interested. So I went down a rabbit hole, but then it was like, yeah,
Hmm.
don't live on a Pluto line or your life is over. But
Yeah.
really, nothing, everything, places can be challenging. Our seasons of life are challenging. Just because you live on a line doesn't necessarily mean
Hmm.
anything. However,
Hmm.
I think we do have to recognize certain places are going to
Yeah.
feel really
Yes.
good to us at certain times. But I'm curious, Ebony, because I've been thinking about because you said I'm like on a Mercury line. I take that with me, so that's great. However, if I was like going to, I don't know, write a book or do something like that, or just in general, people listening, if they're like, okay, I want to write a book, is there like a certain line that maybe they could take a retreat to that would be great for you? Or maybe that wouldn't be so great for writing a book because like me would the sun line just make me want to go to the beach and not do anything but just be like sparkly?
Yeah, yeah.
Or could I like hone myself down to be like I'm here to do this work? I'm
100%.
really curious. Like when we talk about
Hmm.
what energies can support us, that's just an example,
Yeah.
but what does that look like?
It's so personal and there's so many different ways to look at it. For example, writing a book, Mercury,
Okay.
100%. Really, any of the Mercury angles, like any of the Mercury lines, particularly the MC, because that is just the energy focused on work. But then really any of them, because it's you embodying it or other people supporting you with that. So it's a really overall, it's a great Mercury energy is just great for that. And yeah, we could definitely go to places that are really light energy and find it hard to get stuff done. And
Mm,
it's really true in that, in my experience, and like in everyone's readings that I've done over the years, for example, Jupiter is great because it's just all about abundance, right?
mhm,
But there's challenges with everything. So for say, for example, you were like in a stage of life where you just really working hard and building something. And while Jupiter's really supportive, it can also make you feel really sluggish and
oh,
like lethargic, just
okay.
because you just want to be in this blissful state,
Yeah.
because it's an amazing energy. And it's one of those things, like if somebody was living right on a Jupiter line and it was a Jupiter AC, for example, so they're really embodying that, they're probably feeling incredible, but they might really struggle to get the stuff done. It also depends what other lines are around. Say they have a Mars line close by, that balances that out quite well. So they probably wouldn't have as much sluggishness, if any. If the line was further out from where they were living, might not even feel that. They might feel fine. It's really personal to the mix of lines and you can 100% channel the energies in. So you could be like, okay, I'm loving this energy. It makes me feel really good. But like right now, I'm needing to get stuff done and it's not happening. How can I bring Saturn energy in? How can I create that structure? How can I create discipline? Like in all the ways we think, but then you can also go that step further, find Saturn on your chart, see how you can bring that energy in, even if you could take a trip, say you have a Saturn line and it's not too far, you could take a trip and, okay, let's take a trip there and see what I can get done and see how that feels different, that kind of thing. There's so much,
Yeah.
there's so much to it. There's the way the lines intersect, the way they work together,
Mhm.
where you're at in life, what you're looking to experience, because like people, like you were saying, can be quite scared of things like Pluto lines and Saturn lines because they do have that intensity, but it depends what you're wanting to experience. If somebody's wanting a really calm, peaceful home life and they're not really wanting to build anything that requires that real discipline, I totally lost my train of thought there, then they are not necessarily looking for that
Mhm.
structure. It just depends on the person. I think I lost my train of thought there, but I hope that makes sense. It really depends what you're looking for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know. I think it totally makes sense. And I also, we talked about this before we started recording too, because you were talking about, oh, I just made that book example, right? But you said, oh,
Mhm,
you can
mhm,
even look like if you're looking for a publisher,
mhm.
you can
Yes.
look at other places as well where that Mercury line is coming. Maybe you're not living on it. You have a book, you've already done the work, but maybe you're looking for the right publisher. Maybe it is a
Mhm.
Saturn line or a Mercury line where that
Yes.
publisher could be perhaps. I don't know if you want to
Mhm.
explore that a little bit. I thought that was a bit fascinating
Yeah.
as well.
So say you're looking for, I don't know much about business, but say you're looking for, yeah, a publisher, a business partner, somebody to connect with in a business sense, for a
Sure.
business
Yeah.
purpose.
Investors. Yeah.
Um, and say you're tossing up a few different locations, and one of those locations is, say, a Neptune line, and the other is Saturn, and the other is Mars. You are probably, depending on the business, but overall, you'd be wanting to look for the Saturn and the Mars because they're going to be the energies for you that channel that getting stuff done. Neptune, spirituality, it can be a little bit, it's great, it's amazing. It's a great place for a retreat, things like that to switch off, but it can make you feel like your head's underwater. You just want to be in this like dream world, dream. You're very creative, things like that. But if you were looking for somebody to publish a book or connect to, they might give off that energy
Hmm.
because it's where they're at in your chart. So it's not necessarily them, but it's the location they're in. So
Yeah.
it's better
Okay.
to look for that Saturn, that Mars, that Mercury, that, yeah, those ones really. And even sun energy, because that's going to be a really, not necessarily, but overall, that gives the energy of things being going smoothly, things being
Hmm.
light, and there's a lot of momentum and positivity and those things. So that's where that comes in, and you can look to your lines and see where would be good to look. If you're tossing up some options, you can use your astrology to see, based on what you need, based on what your business is about,
Yeah.
where to look,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yes, I think it does. Okay, Ebony, I've been thinking about this. So if people are, because one of my friends did this before she moved with her husband, they like had someone look at both of their astrogeography and they were like, this place in the world is actually great for both of you. I'm
Mhm.
curious, is like for couples, for people do like for families, how important is it for it to be that equal? This is good for not good, but this is a space that maybe both of us have sunlight or something like that in, or is
Yes.
it because your energy and you're like, oh, I know I will be like very supported in this place, and you also reflect some of that while you're there because you're with me. I don't know if
Yeah.
that question makes sense, but if a
No, it does.
couple or a family are like, we could move, where should we go?
Yeah. This
What
is
would you
where it
suggest?
becomes a little bit tricky. It's
Yeah.
totally possible. It's much more possible if you're super like open to looking in lots of different places.
Okay.
It can get tricky when it's a family, in that there's so many different energies. But when how am I trying to explain this? I'm not saying at all that the lines of the children's charts are not equally important, just that while they're young, it's not as important as then when they're like turning 18 and they're planning out their life. Like they have that freedom to go with
Okay.
your flow in that way, because there's so many factors to getting everything right. You can get lucky. A lot of people just have spots where everybody's pretty good. Someone might be really good. Someone might be a little bit more challenged, but it just works out. It can require just a little bit of flexibility and definitely focusing on the parents 100%, just because their energy is going to be what influences the
Mm-hmm.
children for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because two people are much easier to navigate in the chart. It would be super, super likely that you would be able to find a place in somewhere even as big as the US where you're both well supported. There might be one that's a little bit more challenged, but as long it's the awareness of that and being like, okay, I'll just be prepared. I might need some help switching off from work because I might just be in a bit more masculine energy, and I just need to be conscious of that. And that's how that can be navigated. And then, yeah, with children, it can be just a bit more tricky, but
Mm-hmm.
it's totally workable. It's totally doable. They will be feeling the energies as well, but they will be feeling your energy more. So that's definitely something to take note of. I hadn't thought about this in a while, but yeah, this is a really good point to bring up, because I know a lot of people are looking to move around. So
Mm-hmm.
it's good to know.
Yeah, and I do think that it was interesting. The gal I know that did this with her husband, they found a place and it was a significant move for them. I've been seeing it a lot, people that have moved to France and they're like,
Mm.
okay, time to leave the US. Where are you going to move? Use your astrogeography, which I think is
Yeah.
interesting. It's
Yeah.
definitely a marketing play. But I do
Mm.
think to that
Mhm.
point is that there are certain places that could be that could be a really cool way to look and see like where could we channel some
Yeah.
of this type of
There's,
energy for our family, or even if it's just
yeah.
a vacation. I
100%.
know now Hawaii is the spot for my family. So,
Yes.
what a great
Yeah.
excuse to keep going there.
Yeah. I think most of the time there's it's pretty good. There might be one person that's a bit more challenged, but it can just be really tricky if you have the limit as
Mm,
to how far you go. But if you're more open, then a lot of the time it works out as well, because there are a lot of places for people that are more neutral. So that's also a good place to look, because a place without a lot of lines or without a line at all is not a negative. It just means that there's just a lot of neutral space. So say three of you have a really positive energy there and one of you has some neutral energy, that's fine. That's totally fine, because they're just going to be able to find balance.
mm.
That works as well.
Okay. I didn't realize that about the
Mm.
neutral space. I love
Yeah.
that. Oh my gosh. Okay,
Yeah.
Ebony, I feel like we could talk about this for another 10 hours because it's so fun, but
Literally.
I love it. I think it's something business owners should be paying attention to. I think people should just start because it's a conscious, how do we really create space and
Mm.
place that supports us as we're
Mhm.
creating impact in the world? But I'm just really curious from your perspective, do you have one last beautiful piece of advice or a resource that you love for
Mm.
people to start going on their own little journey with this?
Yeah. I have two things, but it's they just popped into my head, but they don't necessarily tie into astrogeography.
That's okay.
But it came through to me to share. So I think I'll just share it. The first thing was about empathy. I wrote it down here
Mm,
because I didn't want to
okay.
forget it. But I think this is more in 100% with the work I do with the records.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people feel that they have to detach, especially right now in the what's going on all over the world, that they have to detach from their feelings, from any kind of awareness of what's going on in order to transcend. And maybe this is just so out of pocket from what we've been talking about, but it just came through as really important to share from the pinnacle point of view, like the pinnacle's point of view, the collective that I channel. They're very clear on how detachment does not mean not feeling.
Mm.
Sorry, that's not the right word. Not the right way to put it, but I think a lot of people, yeah, that's right. I think that they think when they detach that they can't feel, that they shouldn't be a witness to what's going on, or they shouldn't feel empathy. And that is just not a supportive thing for them,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
as human beings, we need to be feeling, and we need to maintain and hold on to our empathy to be able to make change. Because when they don't want to witness other people's suffering, then they're never going to do anything to help anybody. And it just came through. It's been on my mind a lot. And just a lot of just energy of being around a lot of people in the online space where feeling and having empathy for other people was seen as a negative thing. And maybe that'll sound really strange, but it's just so not a negative thing. And it's just not what anybody's guides want them to feel, because we are here to experience a human life and not to detach from our humanity. And there's a power in detachment in that we don't want to be dwelling on things and taking everything on for other people and seeing so much that it like feels like a huge burden for us, but we can't completely detach because we'll just lose touch with our humanity. And we need to find a balance between releasing our emotion and releasing what's around us, coming back to ourselves, but also maintaining our empathy for other people, because that's how change is made. And if we lose our empathy, then really everything just collapses. So that felt
Mm.
important to share.
I
And
am so glad
yes,
you
I'll let you
I'm
speak.
no, I'm so glad you shared that. I think that was great, especially because during, yeah, for this interview, I'm like, this is great for personal, right? Where can I be that supports me? But thank you for turning it back around to how can I serve in the world and what does that look like? And I think that empathy piece, Ebony, is so critical. It's critical to all of the work that we do. And I think you're right. A lot of times we're seeing either people be so emotionally attached to events in the world or to things happening and it just takes over their life, or the opposite where it's just,
Mhm.
I don't care, I've transcended all feeling and I'm
Mm.
better for it, which is
Yeah,
also not
the
great either.
balance.
So I love that's your thing that you want to leave, because I think it's such a good reminder for everybody.
Yeah, I just really wanted to
Thank you.
leave
Yes.
that here for everybody. Yeah.
This is so beautiful. You're beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on here and trying to talk
Thank you
about
so much for
a really
having me.
complicated topic. We'll
I
have
loved it.
resources.
Great.
Ebony, where can people like find you, connect with you? I know you said
Mhm.
people can do their own and look at things. I encourage people to do that. But also, if you
Mhm.
really want, if this is something that's been interesting to you, Ebony, you're amazing. I just did one of your, I forget which one it was, but you did the full on, here's the world, here's Amy's stuff.
Mhm.
It's like a
Yes.
65-page document. It's absolutely incredible. I'm going to be going back
Yes.
to it every time
Mm.
I'm like, where should I plan a vacation? But it's absolutely incredible. You're amazing at what you do. So where can people find you, connect to you,
Yes.
work with you?
Before I say that, I just wanted to quickly add for everybody, I do my readings via PDF and they're all written, so there's no face-to-face element. I do a lot of emailing with people, a lot of discussing, and we can go into whatever your needs are, but I do them via PDF and you have this document for life. I just get a lot of questions about it and I just want to add that in. So my website is yoursoulshome.com. And my Instagram is Your Soul's Home. And I think that's it.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah, everything can be found on my Instagram page as well. Yeah, all the links to everything.
oh my gosh, thank you so much. We'll link up when this gets up, we'll grab the graphic of your North Node line going through my cabin area so people can see
I
like how absolutely
know.
nuts that story is. I
That
don't know if
needs
that
to be
made sense,
shared.
but we have to share it because it's so fun. Ebony, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been so good.